Hello, my name is Maria de Los Angeles Mendoza Gonzalez, and today we are going to talk about the elements of sociolinguistics, and let me present something. Okay, here it is. Okay, subject, elements of sociolinguistics, implications for the classroom. Okay, check what's going on. Okay, it's here. Then, when we teach and learn a language, sometimes we focus only on semantic and pragmatic because we think they are essential, but also aesthetic and sociological sense are important too. Why? Well, here we have some reasons. The first one, to foster international understanding and counter negative stereotypes and other prejudice. This is according to Seeley in 1974. Secondly, to encourage learners to compare their own and foreign culture and get a better comprehension of their own. And it is very important because to really understand what's going on in other cultures when something acts in a different way than we do or reacts in a different way than our own reactions, we need to understand that. A way for doing this is comparing. Well, thirdly, to facilitate the learners' possible future visits to the foreign countries, to integrate the language course in a thematic curriculum, and of course, to motivate learners, because we know that when you learn a language, it is important to learn also how they think, their music, their food, even the clothes, okay? Then that's very important, and you really love language then. Well, beyond communicative competence, Byron sees intercultural communicative competence. Okay, that includes these elements. First, we have linguistic competence. That is the ability to produce and interpret meaningful utterance. Then sociolinguistic competence, which is an awareness of the ways in which choice of languages form is determined by settings and relationships. Then we have the discourse competence, which is the ability to use appropriate strategies in the production and interpretation of texts. And then we have the sociocultural competence, okay, which is very important also. And the social competence, with this, in this we have the familiarity of the cultural competence and the self-competence, which is the empathy and the way we react and we can understand all these elements, okay, according to the social way. In this same order of ideas, we can find that it is not only all the 7 elements that we have mentioned previously, but also we need more. And in this case, Argyll, okay, in 1983, he presented a dimension of non-verbal communication. Then it is not only the way they say the things, but also how they say it. Then in the others, we know how, but in this is the way they say with the no communication way, but this means the verbal, okay, the facial expressions, the gestures, the bodily movements, the posture of the body also, the contact, because, and this is a very important element, because for example, some people according to the culture, don't make eye contact. And also, it is not permitted to touch people, okay? That's not okay for them because they like to have this personal space, okay? They have their limits. Then it is important to know because as Latin people, we like to be touching the others and we are very friendly, but not all people is. Then it is important to know all of this about the special behavior and also the clothes, how they use these clothes, what type of clothes are okay and according to some situations, and also other nonverbal aspects of speech. Also, Godicons in 1984 presented some characteristics of a competent communicator. And all of this is about the knowledge of how to gather information and knowledge of personal similarities among others elements. Then, as you can see, to have a good understanding of the social competence and a communicative competence, it is not only to know how to say things and which things are important, but also is about all body of elements, okay, as the way we behave, for example. And then this is very important because it's about, yes, we know that culture exists, but how to let this happen, okay? Raising the teaching cultural awareness among our students. Then there are 2 points of view about this. One is that culture must be tough. Then in this case, this is a premise of Valdez that was elaborated in 1986. And he established that, yes, it's important, okay, culture. Maybe it's not only that we must be interested just because it is culture, but it's more that we have to teach it because it's necessary. And if someone is learning languages or teaching languages, if you don't learn or teach about culture, then he established that we teach meaningless symbols. And on the other hand, according to Alpectin in 1984, they established that the way of teaching culture is in non-elitist and learner-oriented programs. And then this is a neutral form of foreign language teaching because they consider that there are other elements that can be perceived as, for example, imperialism or something like that. Then people not necessarily must learn culture, but only the language. We'll continue with this element. We have here that Byram in 1992 proposes that language study should be seen as a kind of ethnography. What's that? While that the students could be given tasks to complete while on holiday in an English-speaking country. That is that we could share some information with the students so they can be aware that, for example, today is Thursday, and then today is a very important day in the United States, it's Thanksgiving. Then they could do some research about this and learn what food and why it's this day important, etc. No? And after that, they could write a diary in which they record their impressions about this culture in this case. And also another element is that the use of social text in the classroom is another strategy that Byron proposed. And this is that could be focused on social and political problems, for example, a magazine's article. And the idea is to provide students with a more realistic viewpoint on the social and cultural words associated with modern European languages. That is because they consider, or when he considers that if we only use the articles or the readings that are in a textbook, is not necessary, or they are not enough, because they don't present more material that could be perceived as a reality. Then it is more important to check on a magazine article and then find material that is more maybe, or that present more elements that are considered real and in a context. And this is very important, because then you can learn more about culture that only with another article presented in a textbook that it doesn't have more information, okay, and it's very short. Adasco also suggests 4 types of activities to approach culture. And here we have these 4, and one way is the aesthetic sense, by using a well-chosen short story, films, poems, and songs. And also he presents this activity in contrast with the activities that are in the textbook, because they are short stories, of course, in the textbook, but they are not complete. And in this case, if we want something more important, or that would be more meaningful for the students, it is necessary to look for these kind of short stories that we can find, for example, in the library or on the internet, or films or poems and songs, which are going to develop in the student this aesthetic sense. Another is the sociological sense, and this could be developed by the introduction of texts of European history into the language classroom, and then the pragmatic sense by using films to examine intonation, patterns, norms of politeness, and paralinguistic features of conversation. Then it's important to compare also this pragmatic sense or this intonation among students, and also they compare with the sounds they are listening into a conversation or a film, and they can be aware about these pronunciations and the way that are different intonation of pronunciations. And then the last one here is the semantic sense through translation, so students can be aware of some problems because of cultural points of view, and this is really very important. For example, there are some places where you can take, for example, in Germany, if you bring some flowers, okay, you need to be aware about the color, because in some places you can feel very well with this color, but they feel that are not okay. Or for example, in Italy, giving a clock for a present is not correct, because that is a reminder that the time is passing, and then you will soon die. or something like that. Then it's very important to understand these misunderstood and problems, because for some people it's correct, but other people think that it's not okay, or it's a bad look, or etc. And it's not only with the words, but also the other activities that can happen in the real world. Hughes in 1986 provides another suggestions to raise students' awareness of cultural issues. One is, for example, the comparison method through a discussion of different aspects in the target culture, different from the student's culture. Then this is something like the things that I was explaining some minutes ago, is the way of view things, and they are different. Then another is the culture capsule, and this is a reading with pictures and questions for stimulate the class discussion. Also, he presents drama through which the students add out some sense of misinterpretation in the target culture. And we have also the total physical response through commands arranged in an order that will cause students to act out a cultural experience. And then we have newspaper, the students review and compare difference between the equivalent in their newspapers. And all of these different activities can help students to understand, to learn, and provide these elements so they can have this experience and overall to understand and think and reflect on the difference on culture. Okay, the conclusion is that the way we approach the target culture depends on the size of the group, the context we teach, and the school system. Even though it's necessary that the students learn about culture so they can understand better some situations and why people react or act different. Raising awareness of the cultural difference and comparing with their own culture will help students to be motivated and integrate the thematic curriculum. Thank you. And here's the reference. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you.